What's up everybody, GR Zerza here, and today I am bringing you a video and we're going to kind of talk about what happened at the GP in Vegas this weekend. The title of the video is Pricia Good? A lot of people going into this didn't think it would be a good deck. A lot of people I talked to were saying that it wasn't good, that they didn't expect too many people would be playing it. But lo and behold, if we look at the field breakdown here, we've got, let's see here, 4 Prussia players. And out of those 4, 3 of them made top 8. That's a pretty high percentage and a good turnout for the new deck. Now, typically, just to give you guys a mindset here, whenever there's a new format, like back in the Magic the Gathering days, it was always like the red decks would come out and win, because they were a little bit more straightforward in the deck building approach, as far as like the numbers and the cards that synergize well together, and basically like just ending the game as fast as you can. So the aggressive decks would come out and win, and we expected that, but honestly, I thought it would be more Melgus because that's like the known aggro entity. And when you have a brand new format, especially like this where it came out the day before, it's definitely like the Wild Wild West where you just anything goes. So field breakdown: 10 Melgus, 7 Machina, 4 Loki, 4 Adam, 4 Pricia, 2 Hanzo, 2 Faria, 2 Isis, 1 Valentina. Yes, 1 lone Valentina player, and 1 Lyneth, 1 Brunhild, and 1 Fushi. So, not a lot of rune decks. The first thing I'm noticing, lots of strangers, and that kind of makes me smile because I personally am ready to move on from the crazy high consistency that is the rune deck. I personally like the stranger mechanic. It's fun. The games feel slightly different based on which strangers you're drawing, you know, if the decks are trying to do that. But Pricia doesn't seem to even need her rune deck from what I've seen, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So anyway, yeah, that's the breakdown. Yeah, not a lot of runes going on, just 2 rune decks in the top 8, and the rest were all strangers. So Machina was a deck that everyone thought would be huge, and it definitely had a nice showing. 7 people showed up playing it. It's because it has an infinite combo that isn't very mana intensive, and you only need a couple cards, and yeah, you can win just really fast with it, and it's a great win condition. And there are some decks that don't really have ways to interact with that. So, yeah, that was like going into this, I thought it would be really highly represented, and it was. So that being said, let's get into the deck that won. This is the first place deck. Where is my ruler? Oh no. There she is. Okay, so Pricia is the ruler. Basically, you get friendship counters. You pump her up, or every time there's a friendship counter on her, all your beasts and sacred beasts get +1/+1 from the claw, and that's the regalia. So one thing I noticed from watching the coverage was that this was so important. Like, if your deck could deal with their regalia, you didn't just lose. Like, you had a fighting chance. But when they got this in play and got to use it, I mean, the game closes out really fast. So let's kind of talk about the synergies of the deck here. We'll just do the list real quick, and then we'll go into that. So 4 Friendly Seeking Mole, 3 Huang Long, and I'm going to butcher all these names, but you guys just have to deal with it. 4 Fire Chicken, 2 Zont Turtle, whatever, 2 of the Life Gain Sacred Beasts, 2 of the Draw a Card and Pump the Sacred Beasts for 1, Two of the this guy's new, Magnus Guardian Beast. So what you can do with this is you can play him and go get 2 Resonators that cost 1 and put them into the field. So what I saw them doing a lot was getting the mole, and then by then they would have 3 or more counters on their J ruler, and they were able to go and find a Regalia. So lots of consistency rather than using like Percival or something like that to try and like get the top 5 cards and hope there's a Regalia. They're just playing this this friendship mole to go get claws, and it worked pretty efficiently, I gotta say. One Secret Duel in the Moonlight. This card was just game breaking, back breaking. Wow, like every time I saw it cast, it basically won the game. Using your life total as a resource to clear the way of blockers, and just overall have a board wipe for 2 red. So I can't imagine how good this would be if there were Moonwill producers in the format right now. So okay, here's where I was like, man, this guy had some balls, because Regalia Break main, that does absolutely nothing against any rune deck. But when you walk around and you look at the field, let me pull that up again for you guys here. Like, most of the decks were playing Regalia, so it wasn't a terrible call, and he's only playing 2 in the main. So I think, yeah, this is an aggressive call, but if that's where the format was headed and that's what he foresaw, then this is definitely good, because like I said before, having the Regalia in play was like literally what would win you the game for either player. Burning Rush, this is free to play if you have enough friendship counters, and yeah, quite often we saw that happen where it was cast for 1 or for free, and this definitely clears the way, and or can pump a dude for 1,000 and finish the game off. So excellent card. It's a bit aggressive, but I mean, in this deck it just synergizes so well with everything that's going on with the friendship counters. Here's the card that I am completely on the fence about. I switched from Magic the Gathering over to this game because I hate random. I don't like not being in control of what's going on with my field. I hate getting land screwed. I hate not being able to play things just because the game decided I can't, not because my opponent's playing so well. This card is completely random. There are 4 nodes, and 2 of them are just game winning. Dealing damage to their face or getting 6/6 swiftness beast into play. They're beasts, so they get pumped by the claw. That's if you roll that node over and over again, you win. I mean, you'll have like, I don't know, 12/12, 14/14 swiftness beasts, and you'll have a bunch of them. Because if you have 6 counters and you play this, you get a 7th, and yeah, and then the other nodes are untapping the lands. So I'm not a fan of random, and I kind of wish they had printed this card a little bit differently, where maybe you got to there was no awakening, but you got to choose, but you only got to choose 1 for every like 3 counters that are on the J ruler, and maybe make this thing cost 3 instead of 4. I don't know. Anyway, this is how they printed it, so this is what we're stuck with. This card was game winning pretty much every time I saw it cast, and I don't think I ever saw it awakened. So yeah, if you awaken it, you win, because you can just, you know, if they don't have any blockers or any way to stop attackers, you just do that, or you just hit their face over and over. Okay, don't cheat. So this is the card we're going to put up next to Regalia Break. Here's a anti-rune deck. So we have our anti-stranger deck card, and we have our anti-rune deck card. Now, the difference with this card is it doesn't just do nothing if they're not playing runes. You can just cast it. It is a sword art, so you technically can tap your claw and pay 1 green and play this card. So this being in the main, I understand a lot more. Having a counter spell is really good, especially since this deck is a little bit more mid-rangey than some of the other Pricia decks. Okay, so here's the engine of the deck. This card performed so well. I got this card in my draft pool, and I played it, and I only had like, I don't know, I think I had the turtle, and that's it. But with this build, getting the friendship counter for 1 green, not only that, but searching for any of the 4 sacred beasts that you want. For any situation. You need life gain, you got it. You need haste and kill something, you got it. You need bounce something and have a blocker, you have it. Like, it's really, really solid. And not only that, you don't have to pay to put the beast into play. You just tap this thing once you have 3 or more counters. And trust me when I say this, 3 counters is not that hard to get to. And you start being able to control the tempo just completely in your favor. So, yeah, great card. And then obviously the claw, which we've already talked to about at length. We'll go over the stones here. He's got 7 red green and 3 blue green. So the blue seems to be for some of the sideboard cards and some of the strangers as well. So yeah, he's playing blue wizard. Baroost. This card is a game winner. Every time I saw it cast, they just won. Back in the day, we had to pay what, 6 to give everything like +3/+3 in Pierce, and now you're doing it for 3, and it's on a body, so it's pretty good. Liz was actually pretty solid. I saw her played a couple times. I think the Mechanica decks were playing this card as well. Just being able to cancel a chant is pretty solid. Plus a 7/8 body with quick cast for 2 is really good. This to recover to get a second attack. Also 7/8 body with quick cast, just solid. And then Regulus for the aggro, like when you just need to finish it out. His sideboard. Now, I watched the post interview, and he said that one of the things he did was he really loaded up the sideboard to go aggressive, and he said he wished he hadn't done that because he just never needed it. He never did it. So what he was saying is he would rather have more situational cards, and I imagine he would have wanted some addition removal, maybe Unsealing of the Gods. That's for 1 green to destroy an addition. Because one of his hardest matchups, he said, was like red-white, where they're playing like Seal of Lyneth, and they can get rid of his claws for a very low will cost. And being able to blow that up for 1 green and get your claw back and then get the enter effects, like, again, is really good value. So yeah, I think he was saying that he would have gone like a little bit less of this stuff and a little bit more of that stuff. So the third Magna for, I imagine, like the grindy matchups or the mirror, just to have more chances to get that claw out, and because they're probably playing Regalia Break and things like that, so you want to be able to get more of yours. A second Secret Duel. Erendite, this is huge. Really good against like Kaguya, Dark Alice, basically any of the cards, any of the strangers too. So a third Regalia Break, Loki's Insight, and a fourth Don't Cheat if you're playing against the Rune deck. So yeah, so that's the list. So let's try and like break this down and see, like, is this deck actually good? And it's hard to, right off the bat, it's hard to argue that it's not, because it won a Grand Prix. Like, we have to face that fact. 3 out of the 4 decks that were entered, like, made it to top 8, and we almost had a mirror match in the top, but the machine player ended up winning. But then he lost to this deck, which is a lot more. I don't know. I feel like this is less all in, like on the aggro plan, and this has more things to control the board and set up the situations it wants, and it has a lot of consistency while still providing a very fast clock. Like, you're not doing the whole blow your load with Malgus and flip, and then if they if they live through it, like, you're probably losing. Like, this deck doesn't do that. Like, it just incrementally provides more and more pressure, and the clock can get really short really fast. And then in the grindy matchups, like, it just has cards to deal with that. It has counter spells, it has removal, and then it has this card. I mean, I saw a game where a player was literally just dead to rights, had nothing, and then just played this and won. So it can come out of nowhere. The random factor on it, I'm not a huge fan of, like I said already, but I don't know. This Hot Springs card is what makes the deck get to that next level. If they did not have this card, I don't think this deck would be even considered, top tier. And one thing I wanted to point out too, in discussion about if this deck is good and the meta and everything, is that when I started this video out, I was talking about how aggro comes up to the surface usually when a format is newer. The control decks take time. Like, they have to be very specific about what removal they're using, what permission they're using, and what their win condition is. And not only that, the decks are usually, they take a bit more time to pilot, to learn to pilot efficiently, because you have to pilot them very differently against different decks in every situation. Whereas an aggressive deck, you don't necessarily have to do that every time. Like, you can just play the same line and mulligan the same way in a brand new field where you don't know what your opponent's playing. Where the control deck, they need that info. They need those reps, those games. So that being said, the control decks now would probably see this top 8 and say, wow, like, that's a lot of regalia and that's a lot of additions. Because Machina actually uses regalia, and then they have an addition they use that protects the regalia. And that's, like, very important for their consistency and building up their board and then being able to go infinite. Or even if they don't go infinite, they can still win just by the power of, like, Marabella and those cards like that, and the shield, and then they usually play like one rifle. So all these things are additions and regalia. So now, like, a control deck builder might think, I need to change the way I'm, like, constructing this deck and maybe put a few more silver bullets, per se, like cards that deal with, that aren't as general or wide, and they deal with more of a specific problem. So think cards like Regalia Break or Don't Cheat, or where like a wide card would be like Raise and Revive. And that's a card that he said gave him problems, with the red white, because that's another card that can remove his Regalia, and it's a deck that it's a card you can put 4 of into a control deck. So, like, a red white deck that has cards like that would give a deck like this problems. So yeah, so over time that would develop, and the meta will shift, and I'm sure that will, we won't just see Pricia winning everything, because that happened in the past and nobody liked it, and they had to errata and ban things. And yeah, but I definitely don't think, like, at first glance when you read Pricia and you're looking at all this, like, it doesn't look like it's utterly broken. So that's why I'm like, is this deck actually good? Because, like, for years these cards were legal, and they didn't really get played outside of, like a Valentina deck, using Pricia's God's Art to, put one of each into play and win the game that way. But other than that, like, this is the game changer. These 2 cards right here. So I think that now the next question we have to ask is, if we were able to create decks that, without crippling themselves too much, can deal with these 2 cards, okay? Does this deck suffer? Does this deck get knocked down a peg, or does it still have enough fetch and consistency to overcome that? That's what we need to do to decide if this deck is good or not. So we need to have a deck that, and I'm going to throw it out there now, red and white, it doesn't have to be 2-color. It can be 3 or 4 or 5, whatever. But we need to have a deck that has cards like Raisin Revive, that has cards like Seal Vlaneth, and can even maybe reuse Seal Vlaneth with Bastet bouncing it back to your hand. So maybe red, white, green. The problem there is we don't have a green white stone. And I don't think we have. No, we do. We have red white. So okay, so you could do something like that. Maybe just Dark Alice it away. And speaking of Dark Alice, I just thought it was interesting that like this deck might have cost him under $200 to build the whole thing. And then you got decks like the Atom List that you start at $200 with the first 4 cards in the deck with Dark Alice. And now you're talking about Perfect Lokis, all these DBV cards, Kaguya's. You're spending, that deck might be worth $1,000, especially if the cards are full art. So it's crazy to me how, a starter deck with a few add-ins can really just dominate a playing field the way it did. I mean, it dominated. Every game I watched, I just thought there's no way this Pricia player loses. And that's what caused me to make this video. I really wanted to dive into this and I'm kind of thinking about a lot of this on the fly here too, but it just seemed like the deck was so good when you were watching it, but you're like, why? They're just playing like a 4/4 haste, right? Like, that's just a chicken. But the point is, it gets incrementally better. Like, the longer the game goes, the better it gets for this. And that's not normal for an aggro deck. And I think that's the key here, is that this is an aggro deck that gets better as it goes. Unlike a Melgus deck that kind of shoots, it's like a glass cannon. It kind of shoots everything at once, and then it gets worse as the time goes on. So, yeah, I just think that, and the thing is, most of the time, we saw the players using the claw to get like friendship counters and the token, the 6/6 beast, off of her ability when you play the claw. So we didn't even see that many strangers. But there was one game, I believe it was in the finals, where he ended up getting like 3 strangers in his hand, like right off the bat. And he just kind of controlled the board. And he made sure that his opponent couldn't go off. And then he put him in a situation where he had a few tokens and a few of the Sacred Beasts in play. And then he just slammed a Baroost. And that was game. I mean, it's kind of crazy. It really is. And this was all with his opponent only having like 3 stones in play or something like that. So, yeah, the strangers are just, they're really powerful. But the thing is, the deck doesn't even need them. I mean, you can just win with the 40. So, anyway, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thanks for watching, guys. Leave your comments below. Let me know what you think of the Pricia deck, what you think of the format, and what's something you think maybe is unexplored, that with some of the older cards mixed with these new ones that might be really good. So yeah, just click that subscribe button, click the like button, and let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, guys.